Well, I got up this morning. It's Sunday, November 18th, and I hadn't even really rolled over there and popped on YouTube. Man, it's kind of late here. It's lazy Sunday, and finally got to see a video about Sleepy Reader 666, and it's kind of his history of comics part one. Now, he even mentions in the video how I kind of asked him if he was going to do one, and a couple months ago, because when I first started doing these videos on here, we had a moment there where everybody kind of talked about their history of comics. I want to say it was started by a guy named Dakin Howlett, which it probably is, and then a lot of other people in the community got in here and told their stories. Now, I'm one of those people who, I've said it before, there's a bit more to comics than just the collecting part of it. There's a bit more to getting on YouTube and doing the videos and just showing off your comics and stuff. Things get kind of personal. Sometimes we end up knowing each other. On the podcast that we did last Friday on Comic Book Talk, the comic podcast hosted by Captain Cummings, and I think that might be enough name dropping. But even Constant Bromstar was saying how it seems like he has some people who might be better friends, and everybody's online. It's through this comic book community, through comics, and go on and on. But and that's true. But the reason I like the history of people talking about their history with comics and stuff is that it ends up branching off. You end up getting to know the people. They end up remembering things. And that's what comic books do. About anything anybody collects, or any like special toy they had as a kid, or anything like that, a special toy. I've met 60-year-old guys who ended up getting the car back they drove when they were 25, like supposedly the actual car, if not just the make and model and stuff. And it triggers a memory. Memory works on emotion and things that are new and fresh and open your eyes and give you that wow moment and stuff. And that's what comic books do for a lot of people who've been collecting a long time as kids, or people who picked up some comics when they were kids and didn't really even collect them. They see them years later for whatever reason they pop up. And that's what's good about them, because you end up talking about the comics, your memory gets triggered, and you start remembering what was going on around that time, and then you end up trailing off from there. As children, we're all egocentric, which means we're the center of our world. And what's good about having a tool like comics, a toy, a movie, TV show, car, whatever it is, whatever that special thing, your bike or whatever it was, you end up being able to look back on those memories vividly and realize you're not looking at them through the eyes of a child. You're looking at them as an adult now, and you can gain some understanding or some insight. Sleepy Reader mentioned talking about his parents and stuff, and he obviously loves his parents. It's not what I'm getting at, but you kind of remember some of the things he wasn't allowed to do, and then he started talking about how I don't know the wording, so forgive me here, but he was kind of the exception to the family because he was the one into sci-fi and rock and roll and comic books and all the things that were forbidden in his house, more or less. But then he touched on something that really made me want to do this video. He talked about being the first child, and I was the first child, and it's no big secret now. I'm not one to put any dirty laundry out there, because I'm pretty sure my brother may check these videos out, or I think my mom does every now and then and stuff. But my brother and sister had a different father than I did, and I was the oldest one. And my parents were very young, and again, egocentric memory and stuff, things were kind of rough sometimes, but thanks to comics and these videos and stuff like that, and having some life experiences and getting older and stuff like that, I can look back on that times and either make peace or understand it a lot more. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a personal video if you haven't figured that out by now, okay? But as the first child, we were all 4 years apart. My brother was second, I was 4, then when I was 8, my sister was born and stuff. And when you're the first child, to begin with, you are the test you're the test. You're the first one. You're the one that they're going to mess up on. You're the learning curve. You're the one where they come in with the ideas of being a parent and things may be too strict or not strict enough or anything like that. And as they go on, the second, third kid, if you have a big family, things are a little bit easier for them, easier for them because like you burnt the road, man. You there was things you wanted to do, and Sleepy Reader used the word that he was the difficult child, and I don't know, what exactly he meant by difficult child, but as the first child, you need to forgive yourself for a whole lot because it's their first time being the parents too, and you still are an individual, a kid, and a person. And sometimes parents, when they, well, especially way back then, the way I remember things and stuff like that, in their head, you're a kid, they're the parents, they're supposed to set boundaries and rules and take care of you and raise you to be the best thing you can get, and then they figure out it's not that black and white. They figure out that you're not fragile. So the second and third kid end up being like a little bit easier road, and by the time you get to that last kid, the baby in the family and stuff like that, they have to come up with different ways to get attention because the parents have seen it all. Plus, they've probably been through all the horrors that you go through with your kids that you're scared of, appendix out, or the first time they've stayed out late, beyond curfew, all the worrying's out of the way, and stuff like that. By the time, they get to the other kids, as the first child, you chilled them out a whole lot. It's not going to be the end of the world. They're not going to grow up and be criminals or something. Whatever the fears are. So with that said, without putting too much, when I was about 10 years old, 9 or 10 years old, my little brother, who was 6 at the time, ended up living with his dad's grandparents. Okay. Now before that, and I still had that, as the first child, a lot of the responsibility was on me when it came to keep them out of trouble, keeping an eye on them when we went outside. Now you can remember, this was a different time where, like Sleepy Reader said, you were bored a whole lot. Wasn't a lot of entertainment and stuff, so you could go outside, and stay out all day, even as kids. But where my parents were so young, and there's a stepdad with a bit of a Peter Pan complex, yeah, I said it, no, I had the issue there. And, a lot of that responsibility was on me, and as a kid, as we grow up, we become able to handle more responsibility and a little bit more responsibility, or you turn 18, you freak out, and that's when you go wild and stuff. And so on one hand, I was missing my brothers, but on the other hand, as an egocentric kid and stuff like that, there was the responsibility is not there anymore, and it just sort of, it was odd. I felt better about a lot of things. I didn't feel so much pressure. I was actually sleeping better and stuff, but at the same time, where's my buddy? So he would come down and visit and stuff like that on the weekends and stuff here and there. Yet when he came down, it just wasn't, I don't think people realized it. Just, there was times we just hung out and read comics and did stuff like that. But, anything that needed to be done in the house, and anytime we went outside, I still had to keep an eye on him. And if like the dishes didn't get washed or something like that, it was on me. So I was just a kid supposed to be making a kid do something. Then you had my little sister coming in on the bat, and we loved my little sister to death and stuff like that. But where she was a girl and the third child and stuff, we definitely noticed that she got treated a whole lot different. There was a lot of more involvement with her and stuff. Okay, and that's what I'm getting at here. You could resent that or something like that, but as you get older and have kids on your own and be able to look back on the stuff as an adult, you can make some peace for it if you can do some inner reflection and take the time. Look back with a little bit of forgiveness. And there's all kinds of stuff that was going on that's just too personal to talk about, because this is about comics and memory and looking back on things. And I really don't know where this is going, so I'll share some comics here in a second to get my point across. So while all that was going on, when I played basketball, I played for, I was in 3rd grade, and I would get dropped off, and I would do my practice on my own. And back then, to let them know when I was supposed to be coming home, I would have to I would call them on a payphone. Didn't use a quarter. You would flick the, you put the receiver on the thing, on the hook, and you would click it, and they know to come get me. They might have come to one of my games, And then we got to practices and stuff, and I remember how we were old, and what, 7, 8 years old, I think. Wait a minute, maybe 8 or 9 or something in 3rd grade. But I ended up walking a mile and a half, and there was 2, 3 times I walked about 2, maybe the way I went, it ended up being like 2.5, 3 miles to get to basketball practice. So back then, it was a lot of, if you want to do something, you better make it happen. It didn't matter that you were a kid. That was just how my house was. Mom worked, early in the mornings. I could look back now and see who the problem was. And this time, what happens is this you where you're a kid, you adapt to things like that. You see other parents being a lot more involved with their kids and stuff like that. Yet there's this eerie kind of freedom with a brother, and as kids, there's a little bit more freedom. You end up making your own little world here. You have your own little memories, and they've missed out. That's how it is. There's like this understanding, so you lose your buddy and stuff. And give you an example of what I'm talking about. When Empire Strikes Back came out, I was 7 years old, so I must have been 9 or 10 in 3rd grade. But I was dying to see Empire. All the kids had the toys and all that stuff, and I kind of begged and begged and begged to go, never got took. And what happened was, months after Empire Strikes Back was gone, I was sitting in the living room, and I heard my stepdad in the kitchen talking to some of his buddies about how great Empire was, and I just shot him a look. So what happened there with that is that this is one of those things I can look back on. On Saturday mornings, when I was about 6, Flash Gordon cartoon show was on. So the way I'm remembering it, in childhood memories, you got to be careful with them. I remember you could go outside all day, and me and one of my friends just looked at each other, and he had some money, and he's a little bit older than me, not very by much, and we were playing on a Sunday, and we ended up walking about, I don't think it took us more than an hour and 20 minutes. On a Sunday, we walked across town down the railroad tracks. And I'm wanting to say it's probably a good 3 or 4 mile hike, but somehow we made it. It was fun, it was adventurous, and you had this thing where you're like, we shouldn't be doing this, and I got over that real quick. And on a Sunday, I ended up watching, at 1 o'clock, Flash Gordon. So that's kind of where I kind of veered off, because when I watched Flash Gordon, I started seeing the Star Wars thing, and with it, and I picked up here and there in some magazines and here and there, even back then, where Star Wars had come from. So, this was my thing, and it was kind of special, to me. I think when I watch this movie, it's just the most satisfying experience there is. There's only one scene in it I don't like, because it's just ridiculous. It's where Dale has just escaped from Ming's bedroom, and she gets to do a flip and take out 3 guards. It's just pointless, And that was my memory. I was so confused because I liked Queen. The Junkyard Dog came out to Another Bites the Dust, and you had We Will Rock You, and as a kid you loved that song. Kids still love it because of those drums. And bam, I was so confused by the soundtrack because it was supposed to be Queen. I was very confused. Alright. So you pop up about a year or 2 later, and we never really, it felt like we never went anywhere. It was like, oh my God. So when we ended up driving, like what seemed like a forever drive back then, 45 minutes to this place called the Mercer Mall and stuff, they had a Walden Books. But of course all the adults were with their friends and stuff like that, and as a kid you're just kind of circling around them, not getting a lot of attention and stuff, and you get barked at when you try to say something. I ended up turning around, there's this spinner rack over here, comic books. Now here's what's sad, okay? This book haunted me. I'm not going to show you, I've already seen it, but I remembered this page. I was just, all of a sudden everything was okay. I was like, whoa, alright, back to that egocentric world, man. A little kid, a little bored, getting ignored, and bam, you see this right there. The mall is full. It's ironic, a mall full of people and stuff, and you're still by yourself because you're a kid. So I saw this page and I was just blown away, man. This guy's got his legs blown off. What's Superman doing with Batman there? Why are they carrying this guy? What's going on here? Because I've been reading Silver Age stuff and some Bronze Age books and some Legion and a few Justice League here and there, and I was just like, what? This is the Teen Titans? You know what I'm saying? And I was so confused because all of a sudden they pop up with the Omega Man, and I'm like, what have I missed here? So for years I remembered those pages of that book, and it wasn't until, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I found out it wasn't some miniseries that was in my head. I could never find it. It was New Teen Titans number 24. So thanks to that book and stuff, I can remember those things, what was going on at the time, how it was dark outside, it was winter, things was getting close to Christmas, that's why the mall was packed, at what was going on, everybody was just hanging out with their friends, my parents were real young and stuff, and that's why I'm not resentful of that, you know what I'm saying? I don't think I was a kid that really needed a lot of attention. If anything, I just kind of wanted to be, you know, stick me here, stick me there, and, you know, if I need something, you know, I mean, kids, you know, don't get me wrong. And that goes back to where I can remember this vividly, man. One of the greatest first adventures I ever had on my own was, you know, 7 years old, walking the railroad tracks through town to go see Flash Gordon. And then if you go back to 79 and stuff, on Saturday mornings, this would come on like about 11:30, 12 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock. And right at the end of it, every day there's a lady named Pam Holmes who would come and pick me up and take me to the skating rink at 12:30 every day with a couple of her kids, just because, you know, I'd leave my stepdad sitting on this chair like he always was and stuff, pretty much the way I remember it, and I'd be able to get out of the house and I'd go kill myself trying to learn how to roller skate. Yes, I can roller skate. Alright, so like I said, I talked about my brother and stuff, and you know, there's like this, you know, it seems like everything was alright. He was kind of happy about things and stuff, and I got to talk to him probably about 10 years ago about what happened. You know, got the answers. It took a whole lot off of me because a couple years, probably about 2 years ago, within the last 2 years, I actually got to sit down and talk to him again. And he surprised me because he had all these great memories. I'd be carrying around this guilt where I felt like I was rough on him, or, you know, he'd come down and I'd want to hang out with him, but I had plans when I was a teenager and stuff like that. You know, it's hard to balance all that. And I think I remember trying to get him to do things, and he had all these great memories. Where I would like try to take care of him, we'd freeze to death at the bus stop before he moved out. And you'd have all these lines, and you have all these kids with little brothers, and there was the seat with the heater. There'd be a heater underneath the seat on the bus. And they let the little kids get on first, and then by grade, you were supposed to get in line. I tried to get on the bus, and we would freeze down there. Back then, if the whole town was a sheet of ice, they put chains on the bus and you still went, okay? So we'd be down there freezing, and I'd be yelling at him, and I thought I was mean about it. I was like, get that seat, man. Turns out that's one of his greatest memories. You know, he liked getting on there and pushing some kids out of the way and getting that, and all I remember is I was barking at him. And then he started talking about other things. I didn't realize how it seems like my little brother did look up to me, you know, and we're, you know, all that responsibility, I don't feel like we got to be brothers, you know. So we were talking, and he talked about the first time that I scared him. Now, there were some times where I was pretty rough on my brother, because if he didn't do something, it was my ass. And I'm sitting here like, I don't think it's fair for him to be told all this stuff to do when he's in for a visit. You know, this should be time. He ended up spending time with me more than anybody else in the house still. And it got rough sometimes. I mean, you know, boys will be boys and stuff. I hate saying that stuff, but I never was prouder of him than the day that I started on him, and he got big enough to pick me up and body slam me. You know, I was so proud of him, man, and you know, I needed that little kick in the ass and stuff at the time. So, you know, time went by and all this stuff, and we were talking. He's talking about the first time I scared him, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, I don't know, you know, I don't know. Now, to be fair here and stuff, me and him got jumped in the trailer park when he was still in diapers. Well, I don't want to say diapers, but he was probably about 3 years old when I was 7, and we really did get jumped on by a set of brothers that were from ages 7 to 10, and they were beating on us in our yard, and I picked up a rock and started smacking them around to get them off my brother. They were beating the crap out of me, and I was fine with it, and then I got that rock. You know, so don't get me wrong, that's how we were tight like that, okay? And that story sounds worse than what it was, I think, looking back on it, you know. Another boy threw gravels at him one time in the back, and I ended up picking up a rock and hitting that boy upside the head, you know, for doing that. And then his dad not only whooped his ass, but marched him over and made him apologize in our living room for doing that. His name was Dwayne. You know, so that's what I'm trying to get at. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of like I took that responsibility real serious, not have done that anyway. So anyway, he talked about the first time I really scared him. So you get the idea. I'm like, oh God, I was real nervous about him saying this. And it was this comic book right here. This is the very comic. He would come down as when we were older, so this is like 87, and he's, God, what was I would have been 14, so that'd make him about 10. So we're sitting there and we're flipping through these comics and stuff that we walked over to the drugstore and got, and came back, and all of a sudden he saw me throw this book, and he was like, that's the first time I scared him. I actually threw a comic book, and I said, they're putting Booster Gold in my damn Justice League, because this is Justice League number 3. Because after this great Titanic, this freaking masterpiece of a story with all this action and stuff and all this stuff, you get to the last page and there's Booster Gold, and I threw it, man. And he was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "They're putting Booster Gold in my damn Justice League." Well, now that my brother's told me that and stuff like that, with my hatred of Booster Gold and stuff, every time I see this cover for some reason, not that one, this one, whenever I see this, I end up buying it. Even got this. So I'm able to look back on that, and thanks to these books and stuff like that being a trigger, you know, make a lot of peace with that, you know. Alright, so years go by, and Marvel puts out a whole lot of books and stuff. My brother's coming down, and we got to share these. You know, because of, you know, money and stuff as kids and stuff. He would get Guardians of the Galaxy, I would get She-Hulk, and when he'd come down and stuff like that, we'd switch through and, you know, read those books. So I end up buying this every time I see it. You know, Guardians of the Galaxy #1. And man, he was into this book, I was into this one. We fought about, you got my number 5 and 6, you know, we go back and forth and stuff. So me and my brother got to spend a lot of time hanging around looking at comic books, and that lasted for years. Even when we'd go years without seeing each other and stuff like that, or months or whatever it was, it'd be the comics. If I sold comics or was wanting to get rid of some, he's the first guy I would call and all that stuff. And, you know, he's a good guy. So a little bit early before that year and stuff like that, I'm back at that great Mercer Mall, and this comic book is up on a shelf at that Walden Books. Now my grandmother, me and her were tight. I have no idea what I'd done without her. And she was an alcoholic, okay? I thought she was kind of funny. She'd get drinking and she'd get on her kids' nerves. Oh my God, I can laugh about it now, man. But she would just get on their nerves. When I got older, man, she got to me a little bit. You know, I spent, you know, about 9 months taking care of her and stuff when I was like in my early 20s, and wow. I mean, yeah, she got me and all that stuff. So, you know, I don't know, I don't like using the word poor or something like that, but I think every dollar did count in the house. Okay, I mean, don't get me wrong. So, you know, I didn't really I'd get stuff, but I didn't get a lot of nice things. And if I did get stuff, it was always, you know, I had to stretch that nickel and stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, okay? But, you know, when you work your butt off and you get good grades and all that stuff, sometimes you feel like you deserve something. You know, we should all spoil ourselves every now and then. Well, my grandmother snuck and got this after my mom said no. When we got back to her house that night, or something like that, and I was going to spend the night at her house and stuff like that, she whipped this out, you know. So if there's ever a fire, this is going somewhere. And thanks to that, I always, you know, that's a good memory, you know. A lot of other memories with her and stuff, but that one could be relived. And there's another thing. So as you kind of get a flavor of, you know, parts of what it was like growing up and stuff like that, you reach this point where you just got to get out. I felt like I'd already had a lifetime responsibility. I'd gotten good grades, and you know, one of the things that gets you through is you're going to be 18 and you're out of there, and you know, we all want to get out eventually, don't get me wrong. And things kind of disintegrated. That's a nice way to put it. And, you know, you saw the writing on the wall, and surprise, there was about 2 years Howlermouse probably wasn't in the comics. Okay, and two things happened. Okay, I ended up having some friends. I hung out with them, and I ended up with a duffel bag, a green duffel bag, all my clothes, a radio and a cassette recorder, and I hit the road. And those could just be a whole other set of videos herself. Howlermouse was hitchhiking and stuff, and walking, and was happy as shit. I got dropped off. Person who dropped me off wouldn't even drive me all the way to where I was going, and this is somebody that I think could have. And I don't know, I walked a couple miles and I looked around and I just kind of wondered. I was like, I wonder how far I can go. And just to give you an idea, when I started this, I had, you know, a mullet. And by the time it was over with, I had a ponytail. Okay, ended up getting with truckers. About 2-3 months into it, I was heading back. I'd had enough. I think I had $500 where I graduated. People had sent money and stuff, and I ended up in Baltimore over the summer with a job. So it was a few months after July 4th, '91, and I just ended up traveling. And about 2-3 months into it, time's kind of fuzzy on that point. Ended up, this trucker was trying to buy me a breakfast, and I refused to do it. I was probably 2.5 hours from coming back to where I came from, and he had this plate of food in front of him, and he kept trying to buy me breakfast, and I'm like, no, no, no. And I kind of told him my story a little bit, and he ended up shoving the plate to me, and he said, I'll be right back. So I hurried up and ate and all this stuff, and he was back, I don't know, man. It wasn't long, but, you know, but I'd already ate all the food. And what had happened was I ended up getting with truckers. Okay, they would pay me anywhere from $25 to $100, whatever they had on them, to just ride shotgun and keep them company. And I would always have a ride from there on out. They would go up on an exit, like there'd be a bridge going across the 4-lane. I would jump on that exit, jump out of the truck, run across the bridge, and jump into another truck and go on. Now, again, now that I'm older, holy cow, man, yeah. No way in the world I recommend that, and I would kill my son if I even heard about it. But I was right there on that verge, at least for around here, to where what I consider the world was normal and the freaks were minimum, to where things were really getting weird. You know, I kind of say that tabloids used to be something you frowned on, and only grandmothers would buy them at the grocery store, to where the news finally started reporting tabloid news is real, and that's why we have all these great celebrities and stuff like that. We're more interested in Lindsay Lohan's criminal record, what's going on with the Kardashians, than real journalism. To me, that's how the world changed around that time. O.J. Simpson started it all. As I've kind of rambled on. So in that time that I wasn't there, well, two of my friends, they were brothers, and their family had just moved into this old farm, old cabin that was like over 100 years old, and they built a kitchen and a living room and a bathroom to it or something. And they had this old, it had been like, I'm serious, this was probably 100-year-old woodshed in the back. Dark brown wood, holes in it, weathered, stuff flew out of it all the time. I ended up keeping all my comics there for storage. I had nowhere else to put them. So the fact that I still have my comic book collection blows my mind. And I've kept this over the years. They just sat in this building. How they survived the heat, how they didn't get infested by bugs, how some rat didn't get in there and chew them up and stuff, always blows my mind. And I keep this because when I put these boxes in there, they were completely white, practically still looking brand new. And in the time I was gone, they had yellowed, stained. I had taped them up so I would know if anybody got in there on them, you know. And I've got two of these boxes left. This one's just the lids left, okay? Because this thing aged more in those 2 years than the entire time I've had it. And this box is probably getting close to like 22, 23 years old. You know. And strangely enough, the inside is still perfect. You know. You can read some symbolism there if you want it. So this video has gone on. I'm not sure what the point was, but like I said, I just watched Sleepy Ritter's video and just felt like I had to make this. Alright, carry on.